Today we will take a short look at the presence of indigenous people in the area. This class is on the history of two cities, Juarez and Paso. I want us to be very aware, however, that there have been people here for thousands of years and that these cities are built on the unceded territory of indigenous people. When I was in third grade, my teacher, Mrs. Wells, went hiking in the Hueco Tanks Mountains, which were then part of the county of El Paso property. She went into a cave and she found some tiny ancient ears of corn and some sandals woven of grass. This was the first time I realized that people have lived here for many, many years. There's evidence of people's lives from thousands of years ago, from rock art in places like Hueco Tank State Park, remains of their homes and artifacts ranging from pottery to metates for grinding, and seeds and bones from their food supplies. What do people need to survive? Water, food, and shelter. When we look at the desert today, we wonder how could people have lived here before all the modern conveniences of running water and air conditioning. Remember that over the course of thousands of years, the landscape and the weather has changed. Once there were lakes and springs that we no longer see. Once there was an abundance of wildlife to hunt. Places like Hueco Tanks, and Hueco is Spanish for a hollow, captured rainwater, so necessary for life. People could build shelters from adobe made of mud and dried grasses, or live in caves. The landscape and the environment provided what they needed to continue to exist. Around 2,000 years ago, we were in the midst of an ice age. Although the landscape was not filled with glaciers and snow, it was much cooler. Also, there were huge animals such as the mastodon, which early people could hunt. The image here represents what White Sands National Park would have looked like back then. Notice the giant animals that provided food for ancient people. Let's look at Hueco Tanks, 30 miles east of central El Paso. People lived there as far back as 10,000 years. The caves provided shelter. The huecos and the natural spring there provided life-giving water, and the land provided food. Rabbits and other animals, yucca cactus fruit, prickly pears, and mesquite beans. The people eventually also planted corn, which had moved its way up north from what is now Mexico. Please see Kay Sutherland's work for more information. It's a fascinating study of the rock art. She argues that Mesoamerican culture influenced much of what we see at Hueco Tanks. Fort Bliss, which encompasses more than 1,000,000 acres, has over 20,000 archaeological sites, and those are just the ones we know about. One of them is called Madera Quemada, or burned wood, and it was named that way because of the large number of burned wooden beams found at the site. Although in this 3D rendering, the adobe 13-room settlement appears very simple and somewhat humble, it was part of a much larger complex. It's part of the Jornada Mogollon culture, named after the Mogollon Mountains in southwestern New Mexico. It was peopled for about 50 years, from 1350 to 1300 Common Era. And during this time, the people cultivated crops, and they traded with other people both north and south. Located near a playa, or the lakebed of an ancient, now dried lake, Madera Quemada was representative of so many other settlements. Archaeologists have found fossilized palm wood from the Gulf of Mexico, shells from the Pacific coast, in turquoise and obsidian from northern New Mexico. When we see these abandoned sites, or even when we go to museums, it may seem as if the people of these ancient cultures just disappeared, but they didn't. Some scholars believe that the Manso and Suma people of the Paso region descended from the Mogollon people. Some of the pueblos in New Mexico, such as Acoma Pueblo, claim descent from the Mogollon as well. The illustration here is of the mission in Juarez that represents the founding of cities here in this area. El Paso de Rio del Norte was founded in 1659 by Franciscan missionaries who came to Christianize the Mansos. It was named La Misión de Nuestra Señora de Guadalupe de los Indios Mansos. And the building is next to the present-day cathedral in Juarez.